Hello, I'm Evan with New Life for Old Bikes. In today's episode, I'd like to show you my 1982 Schwinn World Sport. I picked this up about a month ago in Atlanta. I was real excited. It had been in storage for about 30 years. The saddle, the handlebar tape, which by the way is original, is in good shape. The chrome and aluminum is all really nice. It appears to need bearing service. All the bearings are very, very stiff. So we'll be servicing the bearings in the wheels, the bottom bracket, and the headset. We'll also be putting a new chain on it, as well as new brake pads and new tires. Follow along as we make this bike usable again. If your older road bike has either Wyman, Diacomp, or Schwinn brakes, there's a real good possibility you have this release on your brake handles. When they're released, the pressure on the brake caliper is released. If your bike doesn't have a quick release on the brake handle, you can remove a back brake pad, or you can release the pressure in the tire, and the tire will slide right between the pads. In this case, since we were able to release the brake handle in the front, we have plenty of space to remove that back tire without separating the cable, removing the pad, or releasing the air pressure. Remove the nuts on the front wheel counterclockwise. This particular bike has a clip that hooks into the fork. Make sure to remove that. Before removing the handlebars and the handlebar stem from the bike, I need to remove the straddle cable from the brakes. That'll separate the brakes from the handlebars. Next, I'm going to remove the bolt from the seat clamp. This way I can get the barrel adjuster out of the way. Theoretically, these should be able to be unscrewed. However, for whatever reason, they have bonded with the aluminum. And so unfortunately, I'm going to have to break these out of here. Sometimes things don't come apart exactly as planned. We're going to hope that this side comes apart a whole lot easier. After trying a standard crank puller on the drive side crank arm and chain ring, the only thing I successfully did was strip the threads out. So I've tried several other tools. The first is a puller, and what this puller does is it clamps around the chain ring like this and you tighten it down. The only thing I've managed to do on that is bend the handle. The third thing I tried was a puller. It has a slide hammer on the puller. That hasn't worked either. The next thing I'm going to do is disassemble the rest of the bike and then take it outside. At that point I can stand on it and I can take my slide hammer puller and see if I can't get a little more leverage on it. Worst case scenario, I'll take a reciprocating saw and cut it off. I've unsuccessfully tried to remove the chain ring and pedal arm, and at this point the only thing I see left is to cut it off. So I'm going to take a reciprocating saw. Hopefully I'll be able to cut a V in there and then chisel it out. I don't want to go all the way down to the shaft because I don't want to stand a chance of damaging it. At this point, it's time to see my friend Ed and get another set of crank arms for this bike. Let's get these bearings cleaned up in a little bit of mineral spirits. To remove the freewheel requires a specific tool. Make sure you get the right one for the freewheel on your bike. I'm putting the nut back on, but not tightening it. I need it just snug enough to prevent the tool from coming out. To get enough leverage, I'm putting another wrench on the first wrench. This is the drive side of the bike. You can tell because there are threads where the freewheel was screwed on. Make sure that this spacer goes on the drive side of the bike. The freewheel on this bike turns very smoothly, so I'm not going to disassemble it. I am, however, going to spray some penetrating oil through it. I'll be following that with a lubricant that has paraffin in it. The reason for that is I don't want the dirt to stick to it. Wow, that's not dirty at all. We'll go ahead and pour some lubricant through it and make sure that it stays nice and free. That's nice and clean. There's no dirt in there, or very little at least. If your freewheel is extremely dirty, you can use a piece of string to do this cleaning. Wow, that runs nice and smoothly now. I'm using waterproof grease on this, since chances are I'll be riding it in the rain. This particular wheel gets 9 bearings per side. If you don't feel comfortable putting the bearings in with your hands, just use a pair of tweezers that work real well. This is the drive side of the bike with the thread, so it gets the spacer. Make sure your bearings are snug, but not too tight, and you definitely don't want them loose. Sometimes it takes a couple of tries to get this correct. A little too loose. Perfect. Make sure you wipe a little grease on the threads where the freewheel goes. Before putting the chain guard on the bike, I'm cleaning it up with a little bit of 4O steel wool, and I'll be putting a coat of wax on it. You can see where this chain guard has saved the spokes on this bicycle. This doesn't have to be super tight because as you pedal, it will tighten up the freewheel. Perfect. Before I put the new tires on the wheels, I'm going to clean them up with a little bit of 4O steel wool. 4O won't scratch the metal, and I should save a little time by using the wax on the steel wool. I'll also be getting the spokes and making sure they're clean as well. The narrower the tires, the tighter they fit on the wheel. Well, how about that? Make sure to wipe out any debris inside the wheel. If your tire has directional tread, make sure it's going the right direction. In this case, it doesn't matter because I can bolt the wheel on either direction. If your tire has a logo on it, a good spot to put that logo is right over the valve stem. It makes it real easy to find that valve stem. Let's see, valve stem and logo. There we go. Make sure your tire is well seated before pumping it up to full pressure. I'm taking a little 4-0 steel wool and cleaning and polishing my rear derailleur. Shined up beautifully. Check that out. All the parts and components are being finished off with some wax. Remember to fill this seam with grease. The type of grease you want to use is waterproof grease. Put a little bit of grease on the handlebar stem so it doesn't get stuck. That way it'll be easier to get it out the next time you have to do this. There we go. The shaft on the bottom bracket has one side that's longer than the other. The long side goes through to the drive side of the bike. That's the side that gets the gears. The pedals tighten to the left on the left side. Make sure you start by putting it on the small chain ring in the front. Then we're putting it on the smallest cog in the back. Goes in front of the top cog on the derailer and behind the bottom cog. That's a bit too long, so I'm going to take off about 2 links. That ought to give me plenty. This is a chain brake tool. The tool has a shaft in it that pushes the rivet out of the chain. Inside the brake handle is a slot. We're going to feed the cable through the top of the brake handle and through that slot. Next, we're going to take this straddle cable right here, and it's going to go through this slot on both sides of the brake. There we go, we're hooked up. Next, hook up the quick release. Very good. The next thing to do would be to adjust the cable with the barrel adjuster right here. This is my 1982 Schwinn World Traveler. I've just completed a full service on her. I haven't done a restore, I've just made her fully functional. Let's take her past Civitan Park and see how she does. That was a very successful 8.5-mile ride. I really enjoyed it. This brings me back to a simpler time when I had a bike that was just like this as a child. If you have any questions or comments, let me know in the section below. And don't forget, like and subscribe.